I heard my daughter say those words as casually as if she were discussing the weather, and I knew right then that she had decided to bury me alive while I was still breathing. She thought a woman of 56 would just bow her head. I did not scream or beg. I simply smiled, unlocked my phone, and made the single call that would change everything. By the time she realized her mistake, it was far too late. My name is Lorraine Kessler. I am 56 years old, a widow, and I have lived in the quiet suburbs of Briar Glen, Northlake, for over 30 years. In my family, we have an unwritten rule of silence. My daughter, Avery, has perfected the art of performance. To the outside world, she is the dutiful daughter. But when the doors close, her voice drops to a temperature that could freeze water. I sat in my sedan outside Avery's newly purchased home, clutching a small velvet box in my lap. It was not a birthday gift for her 30th birthday. It was an anchor for me. Inside was a folded, yellowing note from my late husband, written days before his heart gave out. I ran my thumb over the paper, reciting the words I had memorized. He had written, "Do not give power to those who despise your dignity." I took a deep breath, slipped the box into my purse, and stepped out into the chill of the evening. The party was in full swing when I entered. The house smelled of expensive catering and fresh paint. Avery was in the center of the living room, holding a glass of champagne, surrounded by her friends. She looked radiant, successful, and terrifyingly calculated. "Oh, look, Mum is here," Avery announced, her smile stretching tight across her face. I nodded, forcing a polite smile. "Happy birthday." "Avery, the house looks beautiful." My best friend, Dottie, rushed over to squeeze my arm. "Lorraine, isn't this wonderful? Avery has done so well for herself. You must be so proud. Mothers and daughters. There is just nothing like that bond." Dottie believed the world was soft. I did not have the heart to tell her that some bonds are chains. I made my way toward the kitchen to get a glass of water, trying to make myself invisible. That was when I heard it. Avery's voice carried over the low hum of music, sharp and distinct. "Honestly, I don't know why she holds on to that big house," Avery was saying to a friend. "Old people don't need money, they just need care. It's actually selfish to hoard assets when the next generation is trying to build something." I froze. The glass in my hand felt suddenly heavy. I looked over. Avery knew I was within earshot. She did not lower her voice. She pitched it perfectly so it would land like a dart. Her husband, Caleb, was standing near the kitchen island. He looked at me, then quickly looked down at his shoes, his hands fidgeting with a napkin. Caleb was a gentle man, but his spine was made of water. He knew what was happening, and he was choosing survival over loyalty. I turned my back to them and walked to the granite counter to pour my water. That was when I saw it. Pushed slightly under a stack of mail was a thick binder clipped together. The label on the spine had been typed in bold, sterile letters, "Kessler Trust Draft." My heart hammered a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I did not gasp. I did not tremble. For 20 years, I worked as a financial administrator at Meridian Harbour Logistics. I spent my life reading contracts, spotting discrepancies, and managing assets. I knew exactly what a trust draft looked like. And I knew that you do not draft a trust for someone else's assets unless you plan to take them. I remembered the day my husband died 3 years ago. Avery had not hugged me first. She had looked at the insurance papers on the table and said, "Mum, you are too emotional to handle this. Let me handle the money for you." It will be easier. I had believed her then. I had thought it was love. Now, staring at the binder on the counter, I realized it had never been love. It had been an assessment of value. I did not confront her. I did not scream. I drank my water, said my goodbyes to Dottie, and walked out the front door. That night, I went home to my empty house. I walked into my study and opened the heavy steel safe in the wall. I looked at the deeds, the insurance policies, and the accounts that bore my name. I realized that my daughter did not see a mother. She saw a liquidity event. I whispered to the empty room. If you want a war, Avery, you have picked the wrong opponent. My financial life was not complicated, but it was substantial. There was the life insurance payout from Daniel, which sat in a high-yield savings account totaling $450,000. There was the house in Briar Glen, a 4-bedroom colonial that we had paid off in full 15 years ago. And then there was my own retirement fund from Meridian Harbor Logistics, a nest egg I had built dollar by dollar over 3 decades. To my daughter, these were not safety nets. They were idle capital waiting to be liberated. The campaign to remove me from my own life began with suggestions that sounded like kindness. Avery started dropping by with brochures for active senior living communities. Mom, honestly? She said one Tuesday, tossing a glossy pamphlet onto my coffee table. Why are you scrubbing 4 bathrooms? There are condos downtown. They have concierge service. It would be so much easier for you. Then came the technical interference. I tried to log into my primary checking account one morning, only to find my password invalid. When I called Avery, her tone was patronizingly sweet. Oh, I changed that for you. Mom, she said, I noticed you were logging in from an unsecured network last week. I just wanted to make sure you didn't get hacked. It's safer if I handle the digital stuff. You know how tricky these things get. I had managed complex supply chain audits for 30 years, yet suddenly I was being treated as if I could not operate a web browser. When I mentioned this to Caleb during a Sunday dinner, he just looked at his potatoes. Avery just worries. Lorraine, he said, his voice low. She reads all these stories about seniors losing everything to scammers. She just wants to build a wall around you. A wall keeps enemies out. Caleb, I replied, staring at him until he shifted in his seat. But if you build it too tight, it becomes a prison. He didn't answer. He just took a long sip of his beer and avoided my eyes. The attacks became more psychological. Avery began emailing me articles daily. The headlines were always the same. Early signs of dementia you might miss, or how seniors lose their savings to internet predators. It was a subtle, steady drip of poison intended to make me doubt my own mind. Then the phone rang. It was a Wednesday afternoon. The voice on the other end was smooth, professional, and completely unfamiliar. Mrs. Kessler. This is Sarah from the Family Welfare Coordination Office. I'm just calling to do a routine wellness check requested by a concerned family member. Have you experienced any periods of confusion or memory loss in the last 30 days? I gripped the phone tight. Who requested this call? We keep that confidential, ma'am. I see here we have an appointment scheduled for you next Monday for a capacity evaluation. We just wanted to confirm you have transportation. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. A capacity evaluation. I had not booked any doctor's appointment. I hung up the phone and went straight to my desk. I pulled out a fresh notebook. This was not a daughter worried about her mother's health. This was a legal strategy. In the state of Northlake, if a court declares you incapacitated, They appoint a guardian. That guardian gets full control of your assets, your residence, and your medical decisions. Avery was not trying to help me manage my money. She was building a case to seize it. I did not confront her. Instead, I started printing. I printed every email she had sent with those insulting articles. I logged the time and duration of the welfare call. I wrote down the dates she had changed my banking passwords without my consent. I was not doing this out of paranoia. I was doing it because I knew that in a court of law, love is irrelevant, and documentation is king. 2 days later, Dottie came over for coffee. She looked uneasy. "Lorraine," she said, fidgeting with her teaspoon. "I ran into Avery at the grocery store yesterday. She was with a friend of hers, that real estate broker, Marcus. And I asked, keeping my voice even. She didn't see me at first," Dottie whispered. I heard her say, she said, "Don't worry about the listing. Mom is about to sign the papers. It's basically a done deal. She's too tired to fight me." I looked out the window at the garden Daniel and I had planted 20 years ago. The anger in my chest was not hot. It was cold and hard, like a block of ice. "She thinks I am tired," I said softly. "She thinks I am old and confused." I turned back to Dottie. "I don't need to be young to understand a trap," I told her. "I just need to be old enough to know when to keep my mouth shut." The war had begun, and my daughter had no idea that she had just armed the enemy. The meeting took place at a coffee shop called the Gilded Bean, a place where the espresso cost more than a decent lunch, and the air smelled of roasted nuts and pretension. Avery had insisted on a neutral ground for our little family chat. But as soon as I walked in, I saw the ambush waiting. Sitting next to Avery was a young man in a suit that was slightly too shiny, with a haircut that cost more than his shoes. He introduced himself as Brent Halvers. He looked no older than 27, yet he shook my hand with the condescending firmness of someone who believed he was the smartest person in the room. Caleb sat on the other side of the table, staring intensely at a sugar packet, refusing to meet my gaze. "Mrs. Kessler, please, sit down," Brent said, gesturing to the chair opposite them. "We just want to have a productive conversation about your future." I sat down, placing my purse on my lap. I was under the impression this was a family coffee. Avery, I did not know we needed legal counsel to drink lattes. Avery smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "Brent isn't here to fight, Mum. He is just here to help explain things. You know how you get overwhelmed with technical jargon." Brent cleared his throat and opened a leather folder. He slid a thick stack of documents across the table toward me. "We are simply looking to protect you from risky decisions, Mrs. Kessler," Brent recited, his voice smooth and rehearsed. "As we age, managing assets becomes a burden. This is a standard durable power of attorney for both finances and healthcare. It just allows Avery to step in if anything were to happen. It is purely a safety measure." "Just sign it, Mum," Avery said, tapping a manicured fingernail on the paper. "It is for your own good. We want to get this sorted out before anything bad happens, just to be safe." I put on my reading glasses and pulled the document closer. I did not scan it. I read it. My years at Meridian Harbour Logistics had taught me that the devil is never in the headline. He is always in the footnotes. "Page 4, I said, not looking up. "Clause 7. It says the agent has the authority to change beneficiary designations on retirement accounts. Why is that necessary for my protection?" Brent shifted in his seat. He exchanged a quick glance with Avery. Well, that is just boilerplate language, Mrs. Kessler. It allows for flexibility in tax planning. It is standard. And this, I continued, flipping to a supplementary page at the back. It looked like an addendum, easily missed. There is a blank space here for a secondary trustee to be appointed immediately upon signing. It does not list a name. It is just blank. We fill that in later, Avery snapped, her patience fraying. Stop being so difficult. If I sign this, I said, my voice low and steady, I am not just giving you the ability to help me, I am giving you the power to transfer my funds into a trust where I am no longer the primary beneficiary. This is not protection. Avery, this is a transfer of ownership. Caleb made a small noise in his throat. I looked at him. His hands were clasped so tightly together on the table that his knuckles were white. He knew exactly what this was, and he was too cowardly to stop it. Avery let out a sharp sigh and leaned forward, dropping the mask of the concerned daughter. Her eyes were hard. Mom, honestly, stop acting like you are the CEO of a company, she hissed. You are over 50. You are alone. What good is the money sitting there? It is just numbers on a screen to you. We have a life to build. You do not need it anymore. The air at the table went cold. Even Brent looked down, shuffling his papers awkwardly. I felt a wave of nausea, but I pushed it down, freezing it into a block of ice in my stomach. This was the moment. If I argued, they would say I was agitated. If I cried, they would say I was unstable. I forced a smile onto my face. It was polite, calm, and terrifyingly empty. You are right, Avery, I said softly. I should not be burdening myself with these details. Avery's eyes lit up. She pushed the pen toward me. Exactly. Just sign right there. I took the pen. I flipped to the very last page of the packet, the one labelled Acknowledgement of Receipt. It was a page that simply confirmed I had received the documents for review. It held no legal power other than proving I had physically taken the papers. I signed my name with a flourish on that single page, avoiding the signature line for the power of attorney. There, I said, closing the folder and pulling it toward me. I have acknowledged receipt. I will take these home to review with my own counsel. Avery's smile faltered. Wait, did you sign the authorization? I signed for the papers. Dear, I said, standing up and tucking the folder under my arm. I never sign legal documents without 24 hours of review. You know that. Mom, give that back. Avery's voice rose, attracting glances from nearby tables. You need to sign the power of attorney now. I think we are done here, I said. I looked at Caleb, who was staring at the table as if he wished he could dissolve into the wood. Goodbye, Caleb. Brent, it was educational meeting you. I turned and walked out of the coffee shop. I kept my back straight and my pace even. I did not run. As I stepped out into the parking lot, the cold air hit my face, but I barely felt it. I walked to my car, unlocked the door, and sat in the driver's seat. My hands were trembling now, just slightly. Avery was not going to stop. I had seen the desperation in her eyes. She felt entitled to my life, and my refusal today would not deter her. It would only make her angry. She would escalate. I started the engine and looked at the folder on the passenger seat. Come and get it, I whispered. The next morning, At exactly 9 o'clock, I walked into the First National Bank branch on Elm Street. I did not go to the drive-through. I sat down at the desk of the branch manager, a woman I had known for 10 years, and placed my ID on the desk. I want a full history of access logs and attempted changes to the authorized user list on my checking and savings accounts for the last 6 months, I said. The manager, Brenda, looked at her screen and frowned. Well, Lorraine, we processed that request for the profile update just last Thursday, the one you came in for. I felt the blood drain from my face, but I kept my hands folded perfectly still on my lap. Brenda, I was not here last Thursday. I was at the dentist. Brenda turned the monitor toward me. But we have the signature right here, and the ID scan. I looked at the digital capture. The signature was a shaky approximation of mine, the kind someone might make if they had practiced it but were nervous. Pull the security footage, I demanded. 10 minutes later, we were watching a grainy video on her computer. A woman walked into the bank. She was wearing a heavy coat and a scarf wrapped high around her neck. She had hair that looked like mine silver and cut in a bob, but as she walked toward the teller, I saw it. She had a slight bounce in her step, a youthful energy she was trying to suppress by walking slowly. It was a performance. That is not me, I said, pointing at the screen. That is a woman in a wig. I left the bank with a fraud affidavit filed, but my work was not done. I sat in my car and called the Human Resources Department at Meridian Harbour Logistics. This is Lorraine Kessler. I told the benefits coordinator. I am calling to confirm my pension details. Oh, Mrs. Kessler. The young man replied. We received your email yesterday about redirecting the direct deposit to that new credit union account. We are still waiting for the voided check. I closed my eyes. I did not send an email. Cancel that request immediately and flag my file for fraud. This was not just Avery being greedy. Avery was sloppy. She left binders on counters. This was precise. This was professional. Someone was guiding her. I drove 40 minutes to a nondescript office building in the industrial park to meet Miles Acker. Miles was not a private investigator from a noir film. He was a forensic accountant who specialized in elder financial abuse. He wore a sweater vest and looked like a librarian, but his eyes were sharp as tacks. I laid out the timeline, the trust draft, the meeting with the lawyer, the bank imposter, and the email to HR. Miles listened, tapping a pen against his chin. Mrs. Kessler. They are not just trying to steal from you, they are running a guardianship playbook. It is a specific type of fraud. First, they isolate you. Then, they manufacture evidence of incapacity. Finally, they petition the court for emergency guardianship. Once they have that, they can liquidate everything to pay for your care. Incapacity, I asked. I am perfectly sane. It does not matter. Miles said, they just need a doctor to say you seemed confused or disoriented on a specific date. Have you had any medical episodes recently? Fainting, slurring words, I stopped. A memory flashed in my mind. For the past month. Every time I visited Avery, she insisted on making me tea. She called it a special herbal blend for relaxation. Drink it while it is hot. Mum, she would say, it will help you settle down. And every time, about 30 minutes later, I would feel a heavy fog roll over my brain. I would stumble over my words. I would need to lie down on her sofa. Avery would look at Caleb and say, loud enough for me to hear. See, she's sundowning again. The tea, I whispered. I reached into my purse. I had a habit of keeping things. Last week, Avery had given me a tin of the loose leaf tea to take home because I had forgotten to drink it at her house. I placed the small tin on Miles's desk. "Test this," I said. 2 days later, Miles called me. He did not say hello. We found diphenhydramine and a mild benzodiazepine mixed into the tea leaves. Miles said, "Not enough to kill you, but enough to make you fail a standard cognitive test. If a doctor examined you an hour after you drank this, you would look like you had advanced dementia." I hung up the phone and looked at my reflection in the hallway mirror. My daughter was drugging me to steal the life my husband and I had built. She wanted to paint me as a senile old woman who needed a keeper. I did not cry. I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. Panic is for victims. Strategy is for survivors. If they are writing a script, I said to the empty house, then I will be the director. I did not buy a weapon. I bought a terabyte hard drive. In the quiet hours of the morning, I began to compile what I called my living dossier. I knew the laws of Northlake inside and out. It was a one-party consent state for audio recordings, meaning I could record conversations I was a part of without informing the other party. However, to be absolutely safe, I decided I would only record when I could prove I was being coerced. I exported every email, every text message, and every voicemail from Avery into 3 separate cloud servers. Next came the digital fortress. I spent 4 hours on the phone. I placed a credit freeze on my files with all 3 major bureaus. I enabled 2-factor authentication on every account I owned, routing the codes to a burner phone I kept locked in my safe, not my primary cell phone which Avery might try to access. Then, I made the move that would secure my flank. I drove into the city to the offices of Harborline Fiduciary Services. I did not want a family member managing my money. I wanted a cold, impartial corporation bound by fiduciary duty. I transferred the bulk of my liquid assets into a revocable living trust managed entirely by Harborline. While I was there, I executed a codicil to my will. It was a vicious little paragraph known as a no-contest clause with a specific disinheritance provision. It stated that any beneficiary who challenged the validity of my estate plan based on claims of my incapacity, without prevailing in court, would be automatically disinherited. If Avery wanted to claim I was crazy, she would have to gamble her entire inheritance on it. With the trap laid, I needed bait. I called Avery on a Thursday afternoon. I made sure my voice sounded thin and wavering. "Avery, I have been thinking," I said, letting a long pause hang in the air. Maybe I am being too stubborn. I am just so tired of all this paperwork. If Brent could explain it to me one more time, maybe I would feel better about signing. Avery's tone changed instantly. The irritation vanished, replaced by a predatory sweetness. "Oh, Mom, I knew you would see reason. Listen, I can set something up for tomorrow. Actually, to make sure everything is totally above board. I want to bring a specialist, Dr. Lyle Kenner. He is a geriatric evaluator. He can just sign a form saying you are sharp as a tack, so no one can ever question your signature later. It is for your protection." I hung up and immediately called Miles. "Dr. Lyle Kenner," Miles said, his voice flat. "He is a hired gun. Lorraine. He works with half the shady guardianship firms in the state. He charges $3,000 an hour to testify that a Nobel Prize winner cannot tie their own shoes. If he is coming. They are not looking for a signature. They are looking for a diagnosis. Let them come," I said. That evening, I installed 2 high-definition cameras in my living room, hidden inside the bookshelves. I did not hide them because I was doing something wrong. I hid them because the truth requires an unfiltered lens. Then, I called Dottie. "I need you to come over tomorrow." "Dottie," I told her, "I don't want you to say a word. I just need a witness who isn't on their payroll." An hour before the meeting, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Caleb. I stared at the screen, surprised he had the courage to type it. "Please be careful. Avery is not doing this alone." I deleted the message immediately to protect him, though I wasn't sure he deserved it. I sat in my armchair, waiting for the doorbell to ring. Caleb's warning confirmed the cold knot in my stomach. This wasn't just my daughter being greedy. A structure like this, the lawyer, the fake tea, the hired doctor, required coordination. It required a network. I was not just fighting my child. I was fighting an industry. The atmosphere in Avery's living room was suffocatingly polite. Avery had set out a tray of cucumber sandwiches and sparkling water, playing the role of the devoted daughter to perfection. Brent, the lawyer, sat with his briefcase open, radiating a practiced calm, while Dr. Lyle Kenner sat opposite me, holding a clipboard with the gravity of a man diagnosing a terminal illness. "We just want to get a baseline, Mrs. Kessler," Dr. Kenner said, his voice dripping with synthetic empathy. "Just a casual conversation to see how you are managing daily tasks. Nothing to be nervous about." I folded my hands in my lap. "I am not nervous, Doctor. I am just listening." He nodded and made a mark on his paper. "Tell me, what is today's date?" I paused intentionally. I knew exactly what day it was. It was Friday, October the 24th. But I looked at the ceiling, furrowing my brow just enough to suggest effort. "It is. Well, it feels like a Thursday," I said slowly. "But I suppose it could be Friday. The days blend together when you are retired." Dr. Kenner did not write down my answer. I watched his hand. He simply circled a box that was already filled in on his form. He had not come here to evaluate me. He had come to ratify a conclusion they had already reached. Avery leaned forward, placing a hand over mine. Her skin felt cold. "Mom," while Dr. Kenner finishes his notes, "we should talk about the house," she said softly. "Brent has drawn up a deed transfer. It allows you to live there for the rest of your life, rent-free, but puts the title in my name. That way, if you get sick, the state cannot take it to pay for nursing care. I am just trying to protect your legacy." I looked at her. "And what happens if you get divorced?" "Avery." The room went silent. Avery blinked, her smile freezing in place. It was a hesitation that lasted only 2 seconds. But in the world of negotiation, 2 seconds is an eternity. "Caleb and I are solid, Mum," she said, her voice tight. "Are you?" I asked, turning to Caleb. Caleb opened his mouth. "Actually, Lorraine, we have been having some thud." The sound of a shoe hitting a shin under the table was muffled but audible. Caleb flinched violently, his face turning red. He shut his mouth, looking down at his hands. "We are fine," Avery hissed, her eyes darting back to me. "Just sign the deed." "Mum, it is standard. I need to use the restroom," I said, standing up before they could object. I walked down the hall to the guest bathroom and locked the door. I did not use the toilet. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number for the county clerk's office. I had the direct line saved. "Clerk's office. This is Betty. Betty." This is Lorraine Kessler. Has any petition for emergency guardianship been filed under my name in the last 48 hours? One moment. Hun. No. Nothing in the system yet. Thank you. I whispered. I flushed the toilet for effect and washed my hands. They hadn't filed yet. That meant they needed my signature on this voluntary transfer first, or they needed Dr. Kenner's report to file the petition tomorrow. I walked back into the living room. Brent looked relieved to see me return. He uncapped a heavy, expensive pen and held it out. Ready to sign? Mrs. Kessler. Brent asked. Yes, I said, sitting down. I agree that we need clarity. I have a document I would like to sign right now. Avery let out a breath she had been holding. Thank God. Give her the deed. Brent. No, I said, reaching into my purse. I pulled out a single sheet of paper I had typed up that morning. This is a conflict of interest disclosure and fee transparency request. It requires you, Brent, and you, Dr. Kenner, to list exactly who is paying your fees today, and to certify under penalty of perjury that you have no financial arrangement with the proposed beneficiary of my estate. I slid the paper across the mahogany table. If you are truly here for my protection, I said, smiling politely, surely you have no problem signing this before I sign anything of yours. Brent's face went from professional to furious in a heartbeat. He snatched the paper up, read the first line, and threw it back down. This is ridiculous, Brent snapped, his voice losing its smooth polish. We are not under investigation. Mrs. Kessler, we are trying to help you. If you are going to be obstructionist, we cannot help you. I am not being obstructionist, I said, my voice steady. I am being thorough. Isn't that what you want? A competent, thorough decision-maker. Avery stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. You are doing this on purpose. You are twisting everything. I think I will keep my house for now, I said, standing up to match her. And Dr. Kenner, you might want to check your form. You marked me as disoriented before I even sat down. That might look bad in court. I walked to the door. Behind me. The silence was heavy and toxic. I knew I had not won the war. I had simply forced them to uncover their heavy artillery. As I stepped out into the cool afternoon air, I checked my watch. It was 4 o'clock. Avery would not wait anymore. She would file the petition first thing in the morning. She would try to have me erased by Monday. Bring it on, I said to the driveway. The blue lights of the police cruiser flashed against my living room window at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning. It was a spectacle designed for an audience. And sure enough, when I pulled back the curtains, I saw Mrs. Higgins from across the street peering through her blinds. Avery had not just declared war, she had decided to burn the village. I opened the door before they could knock. 2 officers stood there, looking tense, hands resting near their belts. Ma'am, are you Lorraine Kessler? The taller officer asked. I am, I said, holding my coffee cup steady. Is there a problem? Officer. We received a call requesting a welfare check, he said, stepping slightly closer to peer into the hallway. The caller stated you were confused, that you had left the gas stove on and were threatening self-harm. I stepped back to let them see the pristine, empty kitchen. The stove was cold. My house was silent and orderly. My daughter, Avery, called you. I stated, not asking a question. She is currently upset that I refused to sign a power of attorney document yesterday. I walked to the side table and picked up a file folder I had prepared the night before. I handed it to the officer. This is a copy of my physical exam from last week, confirming I am in excellent health, and this is a log of similar harassment tactics used to coerce me into signing over my assets. The officer looked at the papers, then at the clean house, and finally at me. The tension left his shoulders. "I am sorry to disturb you, ma'am," he said. "We have to check." "I understand." I said, "Please give me the incident report number. I will need it for the hearing." They left, but the damage was done. The neighbours had seen the police at the crazy widow's house. Avery had successfully planted the seed of doubt in the community. If I complained now, I would just sound like a paranoid old woman. 2 days later, the process server arrived. He did not apologize. He handed me a thick envelope. Inside was the petition emergency temporary guardianship. The hearing was scheduled in 10 days. Dottie was in my kitchen when I opened it. She read the cover sheet and dropped her mug. It shattered, sending ceramic shards across the floor. Oh my God. Lorraine. She gasped, her hands shaking as she reached for a towel. They can't do this. 10 days. How can we fight this in 10 days? I stepped over the broken pottery. I did not help her clean it up. I felt a cold, metallic focus click into place in my mind. "It is not 10 days, I said. "It is a lifetime, and it is exactly what I predicted." "Good." I went to my study and called Miles. He answered on the first ring. "I found the money trail," Miles said without preamble. Avery transferred $15,000 from her joint savings account to a firm called Silver Orchard Consulting. It looks like a consulting fee, but Silver Orchard is a shell company registered in Delaware. "Who runs it?" I asked. "On paper." "Nobody you know," Miles replied. But I dug into the filing history. Before he could finish, my other line beeped. It was Caleb? I switched over immediately. "Make it quick." "Caleb?" I said. "It's Rourke," Caleb whispered. He sounded like he was hiding in a closet. His breath was ragged. "The guy running this. His name is Silas Rourke. He isn't a lawyer. He calls himself a financial optimizer. He told Avery that if she gets guardianship, he can restructure your assets to bypass taxes. He takes 20% of everything he moves." "Thank you, Caleb," I said. "Don't call again, unless it is an emergency." I hung up and looked at the name I had written on my notepad. Silas Rourke. This was not just a family dispute. This was a professional extraction operation. I needed a shark. The next morning, I sat in the office of Sylvia Trent. Sylvia was 60 years old, wore a suit that cost more than my first car, and had a reputation for making grown men cry in court. I laid out the photos, the T-sample results, the police report number, and the information about Rourke. Sylvia listened in silence. When I finished, she leaned back and took off her glasses. "You have a strong case for defense, Lorraine," Sylvia said. "But you need to understand something about family court. It is not like criminal court. There is no beyond a reasonable doubt. It is about the best interest of the vulnerable person." She looked me dead in the eye. "They don't need to prove you are bad," she said, her voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. "They just need to make the judge see you as inconvenient. If the judge thinks you are a mess, or that your family is fighting too much, she might appoint a guardian just to stop the noise. Rourke knows that. He creates chaos so the judge will order control." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. They were weaponizing the legal system's desire for order against me. Then we do not argue about my health, I said, standing up. We argue about their crime. Sylvia smiled, and it was the smile of a wolf seeing a wounded deer. Exactly. We don't defend. We attack. I walked out of her office into the blinding afternoon sun. I was done being the mother. I was done being the victim. I was going to drag Silas Rourke, Avery, and their entire operation into the light, and I would make sure the glare was blinding. We turned Sylvia Trent's conference room into a war room. The mahogany table was covered in stacks of paper, timelines, and financial schematics. We were not preparing a defense. We were preparing an ambush. We do not let them control the narrative, Sylvia said, pacing the length of the room. If we walk in there defending your sanity, we lose. We have to walk in there prosecuting their conspiracy. My first move was to strip them of their medical weapon. I did not wait for the court to order an evaluation. I petitioned the court myself for an immediate independent examination by a state-approved forensic psychiatrist, Dr. Eris. I walked into his office alone, answered his questions clearly, and completed his cognitive battery without hesitation. There was no drugged tea, no coaching, and no confusion. His report was sealed and sent directly to the judge. It was a clean bill of health that would act as a shield against Dr. Kenner's bought and paid for diagnosis. Then came the dirt. Miles called in on the speakerphone. Silver Orchard. Consulting is a ghost, Miles said, his voice crackling with static. They have changed their name 3 times in 5 years. They were Golden Oak in Florida until they got hit with a class action lawsuit for defrauding seniors. Then they were Blue Spruce in Nevada. Now they are Silver Orchard here. It is a franchise. Lorraine. Rourke is just the local franchise manager. He is a predator, I said. He is a parasite, Sylvia corrected. And we are going to salt the earth. I added my own discovery to the pile. I had requested the access logs for my primary email account. Buried in the data was a password reset request, initiated at 2 a.m. 3 days ago. The IP address did not trace to a hacker in a foreign country. It traced directly to the residential internet service at Avery's house. She had not just manipulated me, she had committed a federal computer crime. But the centerpiece of our strategy was the voice of the man who was too weak to stand up, but too guilty to stay silent. I placed a USB drive on the table. It contained the recording of a phone call Caleb had made to me the previous night, recorded legally under state law as I was a party to the conversation. I pressed play. Caleb's voice filled the room, trembling and thin. It isn't just the money. Lorraine. Rourke says. He says once Avery has guardianship, they can put you in a facility to stabilize you, he told her. If the mother is in the house, she is a liability. Put her away, and the assets are ours. Sylvia's eyes narrowed. That is intent to defraud. That is the kill shot. Sylvia immediately fired off a subpoena to Brent Halvers, demanding his full fee agreement and a list of all payments received from Silver Orchard or Avery Kessler. Brent tried to quash it, claiming attorney-client privilege. Sylvia laughed when she read his objection letter. By dodging the request, he was signaling to the judge that he had something to hide. I spent the afternoon writing my affidavit. I did not write it with tears. I wrote it with the cold precision of an auditor. I detailed the dates, the times, the tea, the fake bank visits, and the isolation tactics. I did not portray myself as a weeping mother betrayed by her child. I portrayed myself as a competent citizen under siege by a criminal enterprise. That evening, Dottie called me, sounding frantic. "Lorraine, have you seen Facebook?" she asked. "Avery posted a long story. She is saying you are mentally unstable and hoarding money while the family suffers. She is playing the victim. All her friends are commenting, saying how brave she is. Let them comment," I told her. "She is putting her lies in writing. Every post she makes is just more evidence that she is trying to poison the jury pool before we even get to court. Do not reply. Dottie." Silence is louder. I hung up and turned off my phone. The house was quiet. The war was tomorrow. I walked to the bookshelf and took down the small velvet box I had carried to Avery's party what felt like a lifetime ago. I sat on the edge of my bed and opened it. Inside lay the note Daniel had written me before he died. The paper was soft with age. I read his handwriting, the loop of his L and the sharp cross of his T. "Do not give power to those who despise your dignity." I ran my thumb over the ink. I was not fighting for the money. I could live in a shack and be content. I was fighting because my daughter believed that my dignity had an expiration date. She believed that becoming old meant becoming property. I closed the box and set it on the nightstand. Tomorrow. Daniel. I whispered to the dark room. Tomorrow, we teach them the difference. The hearing took place in courtroom 4B of the Briar Glen County Court. The air smelled of floor wax and stale anxiety. Presiding over the bench was Judge Marlene Quaid, a woman with steel-grey hair and a reputation for shredding anyone who tried to weaponize the legal system against the elderly. She did not look at the files. She looked at the people. Avery had dressed the part of the heartbroken daughter perfectly. She wore a soft pastel cardigan and little makeup, clutching a tissue as if she were holding on to her last shred of hope. Behind her sat Brent Halvers and Dr. Kenner, looking like a formidable wall of professional concern. Sylvia Trent did not waste time with opening emotional pleas. She walked to the podium, her heels clicking a sharp rhythm on the hardwood. "Your Honor," Sylvia said, her voice projecting to the back of the room. "Before we discuss Mrs. Kessler's mental state, we must establish the credibility of the evidence against her. I would like to ask Mr. Halvers a simple question. Who paid the retainer for your services and the fee for Dr. Kenner's evaluation?" Brent stood up, adjusting his tie. "Your Honor, that is privileged attorney-client information, not if the payer is a third party with a financial interest in the outcome," Judge Quaid said, leaning forward. "Answer the question. Counselor." Brent hesitated. The funds were facilitated through a consultancy group assisting the family. Sylvia held up a bank statement, enlarged on a poster board. "By consultancy group. Do you mean Silver Orchard Consulting? A shell company that transferred $12,000 to your firm 2 days before the petition was filed." Avery shifted in her seat. The tissue in her hand was now a ball of white pulp. Sylvia pivoted to Dr. Kenner. He sat in the witness box, looking bored. "Dr. Kenner," Sylvia asked, "you claim you conducted a thorough evaluation of Mrs. Kessler on October 24th? Is that correct?" "Yes," Dr. Kenner replied smoothly. She was disoriented and agitated. "And when did you document these findings?" "During the interview." As I observed them, Sylvia walked back to her table and picked up an enlarged photograph. It was a high-resolution image taken from the hidden camera in my bookshelf. It clearly showed Dr. Kenner holding his clipboard at the beginning of the meeting, before he had asked me a single question. The checkbox for cognitive impairment was already marked in black ink. "Then can you explain to the court?" Sylvia said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, "why the form in your hand was already filled out before my client had even sat down?" Kenna's face went pale. That must be a preliminary note. A mistake. It looks like a verdict. Doctor. Judge Quaid interrupted. Her eyes were hard. Strike the evaluation from the record. Then it was my turn. I took the stand. I did not look at Avery. I looked at the judge. "Mrs. Kessler," Judge Quaid asked gently, "do you feel you need protection?" "I do, Your Honor," I said clearly. "But not from myself. I am 56 years old. I manage my own investments. I fear being made powerless while I am still lucid. I fear that the law is being used as a weapon to silence me so my assets can be liquidated." The room was silent. Then Caleb was called. Avery turned to him, her eyes wide, silently begging him to stick to the script. Caleb walked to the stand. He looked sick. He sat down and stared at his hands for a long time. "Mr. Kessler," Sylvia said, "did you agree with the decision to file for guardianship?" Caleb looked up. Tears were streaming down his face. "No," he whispered. "Speak up, Mr. Kessler," Judge Quaid ordered. "No," Caleb said, his voice cracking. It wasn't about her health. It was Rourke. Silas Rourke. He told Avery that if we didn't get control of the accounts by the end of the month, the tax structuring wouldn't work. We were supposed to sell the house and move the funds to the trust managed by Silver Orchard. "Caleb, shut up!" Avery screamed. The entire courtroom gasped. Avery stood up, her face twisted in a mask of pure rage, the good daughter act dissolving in an instant. "She is selfish," Avery yelled, pointing a trembling finger at me. "She sits on that house and all that insurance money while we are trying to build a future. She doesn't use it. Mom, you are over 50. Old people don't need money. They just need care." The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a grave. Judge Quaid slowly took off her glasses. She looked at Avery with an expression that was no longer judicial. It was deeply, personally offended. "Did you just say," Judge Quaid asked, her voice dangerously low, "that the elderly do not need money?" Avery froze, realizing too late that she had just spoken her true intent into the court record. I meant," Avery stammered. Judge Quaid slammed her gavel down. The sound was like a gunshot. "We are taking a recess," Judge Quaid announced, her voice booming. "Bailiff, please contact Adult Protective Services immediately. I want a representative here within the hour to investigate potential financial abuse. And Mr. Halvors, you will remain in this courtroom. I am going to determine if sanctions are appropriate for filing a frivolous and malicious petition." Avery sank back into her chair, looking at me. She expected me to look away, or to look sad. I did not. I looked at her with the dry eyes of a woman who had just watched a stranger destroy herself. She thought her tears would save her. She did not realize that in Judge Quaid's court, tears do not wash away evidence. Judge Quaid returned to the bench with a face like thunder. She did not shuffle papers or consult her clerk. She leaned forward, her gaze sweeping over Avery, Brent, and Dr. Kenner like a searchlight. "The petition for emergency guardianship is dismissed with prejudice," Judge Quaid declared, her voice echoing off the wood paneling. "Furthermore, This court finds sufficient indicia of predatory financial abuse to refer this matter to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation. Avery let out a choked sound, her hand flying to her mouth. But the judge was not finished. "Mr. Halvers, Dr. Kenner," Judge Quaid continued, her tone dropping to absolute zero. "You are ordered to surrender your complete files, including all billing records and correspondence with Silver Orchard Consulting, to the State Bar and the Medical Board respectively within 24 hours. If I find one text message deleted, I will hold you in contempt." Brent slumped in his chair, his face grey. He knew what that meant. It was not just a loss. It was a career death sentence. The reputation he had built was gone in a single sentence. I stood up slowly. I asked for permission to speak one last time. "Your Honor," I said, turning slightly so Avery could see me. "For the record, the estate that my daughter was so desperate to protect no longer exists in its previous form. Before this petition was filed, I transferred all assets into an irrevocable trust managed by Harborline Fiduciary Services." Avery's head snapped up. "What, and—" I continued, my voice steady. "Because you filed this petition alleging incapacity without medical basis, you have triggered the no contest clause in my will. You are effectively disinherited." Avery looked as if the floor had dropped out from under her. She slumped against the table. She finally understood. It was never just about the bank account balance. Money was the tool that gave me the power to say no. By trying to take the money, she had tried to take my voice. Now, she had neither. Caleb stood up then. He looked terrified, but he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. He walked past Avery, who tried to grab his arm, and handed it to the bailiff. "This is the contract," Caleb said, his voice shaking. "Rourke made her sign it. It promises him 20% of the estate once the guardianship was finalized. He threatened to sue us if we backed out." Judge Quaid took the document. "Thank you, Mr. Kessler. This will be very useful for the prosecutor." She turned her eyes back to Avery. "Ms. Kessler," the judge said, "you used this court as a weapon. You thought because your mother is aging, she is a resource to be mined. Let me be clear, this courthouse is not a place where you get to punish your parents for living too long." The gavel came down. The sound was final. "The petitioner is ordered to pay all legal fees incurred by Mrs. Kessler," Judge Quaid ruled. "Additionally, I am issuing a temporary restraining order barring Avery Kessler from acting as an agent, representative, or signatory for Lorraine Kessler in any capacity, indefinitely." It was the ultimate irony. Avery had come here to control my finances. Instead, the court had just legally forbidden her from ever touching a single cent of mine again. I did not smile. I did not cheer. I simply packed my papers into my bag. Avery was sobbing now. Real tears this time, born of total defeat. I walked past her table. She looked up at me, her mascara running, looking for some sign of the mother who used to fix everything. "Mom, please," she whispered. "I just wanted us to be secure." I stopped. I looked down at her. "You said old people don't need money, Avery," I said softly. "But the court just made it very clear old people need rights." I turned and walked out of the courtroom. The double doors swung shut behind me, muffling the sound of her crying. I walked out into the bright sunlight of the parking lot. I felt lighter than I had in years. I was alone. Yes. But I was free. I had not sought vengeance with a knife or a scream. I had sought it with the truth. I did not destroy my daughter. I simply unmasked her before the one person she could not manipulate a judge. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to the story. It's crazy how far people will go for money, even against their own family. I'd love to know where you guys are tuning in from. Drop your city or country in the comments below so we can see how far our community reaches. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button for Nora revenge stories, like the video, and smash that hype button to help this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next one.